I always thought my marriage was steady. Not perfect, but stable. We had our routines, Sunday breakfasts, grocery runs, the occasional weekend getaway. Comfortable. Predictable. That's what marriage becomes after a few years, right? I didn't notice the exact moment things started to change. It was gradual. Subtle. My husband began coming home later than usual, claiming work was just more demanding. He wasn't cold but distant. I'd catch him scrolling through his phone late at night, tilting the screen slightly away. I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. I didn't want to be that kind of wife, the suspicious, controlling one. But it lingered. A kind of silence between us that wasn't about peace but absence. And then one night, during dinner, without warning or build-up, he asked me something that didn't make sense. He said, "Would you ever fall in love with someone else, if I asked you to?" I laughed. I thought he was joking. I asked if he was drunk or messing with me, but he looked completely serious, like he'd rehearsed the question in his mind 100 times. He explained that he wanted to try something different, that he was curious. He used words like reignite, trust, emotional truth. He said we'd grown too dull, too numb, too comfortable, that we were good roommates, not lovers anymore. And this strange idea, was supposed to bring us closer. I asked him what exactly he meant. He said, just talk to someone. Flirt. Go through the motions of falling in love. And then tell me about it. Every detail. No lies. It sounded like a trap. Like some twisted test. But his tone wasn't threatening. He wasn't angry. He was almost calm. Intrigued. I didn't understand it, but I didn't say no either. Maybe part of me was curious too. About how far we had drifted. About what I would feel if someone else actually made me feel wanted again. Maybe I needed to know if I still could. The next morning, I still wasn't sure if I dreamt it. But he brought it up again casually, like it was just another part of our morning routine. No tensión. Just coffee and emotional landmines. He said it again. Find someone. Let yourself feel something. Then come back to me with it. I agreed. Not out loud. But I didn't protest. I let the idea sink in. I started paying attention to how empty the space between us had become. I started writing down my thoughts, tracking the emotions I'd tried to ignore. I wasn't sure what this would turn into. I wasn't even sure what he truly wanted. But something had shifted between us. The rules were gone. And whether I liked it or not, the door had been opened. And once it was open, I knew I wasn't going to be the same again. That I didn't go looking for anyone right away. For a while, I told myself the idea was absurd and I wasn't going to entertain it. But the more I sat with it, the more it crept in. I started thinking about people from my past.
Façàs, conversacions, finisce moments.
One name stuck. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who used to mean something before life moved on. I found his profile. No harm in looking. That's what I told myself. The message I sent was simple, polite, something casual enough to pass off as nothing. He responded the same day. Friendly, curious, and surprisingly open. We started talking. Just catching up at first, careers, cities, mutual friends. It was harmless. But there was an undertone neither of us addressed. Familiarity. Chemistry. That tension you can't fake. My husband knew. I told him I'd reconnected with someone. He asked questions, wanted to hear it all. He listened closely like it was some kind of story being told for his benefit. He didn't flinch. Just nodded, asked how it made me feel. The more I told him, the more interested he seemed. Not jealous. Almost entertained. It didn't feel like a game anymore. Not to me. I started looking forward to the conversations. Checking my phone more often. Smiling at my screen in ways I hadn't smiled in months. I told myself I was just following the rules of his strange experiment. But I knew I was slipping. This wasn't about him anymore. This was mine. I started leaving out details. Not lying, just omitting. The conversations turned personal. Late-night confessions, emotional closeness, little phrases that made my chest tighten. My husband asked if anything had changed. I said no. I didn't want to see his reaction. I didn't want to admit that the connection had started feeling real. He kept encouraging it. Told me to explore, to dive deeper. I didn't understand what he was hoping for. Was he waiting for me to cross a line so he could say, "I knew it"? Or was he trying to live through my experience because he couldn't feel anything on his own anymore? I couldn't tell. And I stopped trying to figure him out. I was drifting. The emotional pull was stronger than I expected. I would go to sleep thinking about someone else. I would wake up wondering what he'd say today. The guilt was faint at first. Manageable. But it started growing. Not because of what I was doing, but because of how easy it became. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was chasing something I thought I had buried a long time ago. I didn't feel like a wife. I didn't feel like I was part of a marriage anymore. I felt like I had stepped into an entirely different life. One where I was seen, heard, wanted. And the scariest part was that I didn't want to go back, that he came into town unexpectedly. Said he had a business meeting and would be around for a few days. I told myself it didn't mean anything. It was just a coincidence. But I knew exactly what I was walking into the moment I agreed to meet him. We'd already gone too far emotionally. This was just the next step neither of us wanted to name. We met like old friends. The conversation flowed easily, too easily. It didn't feel awkward or forced. It felt natural, comfortable in a way that should have made me uncomfortable. We laughed about memories, filled in the gaps of our years apart. But underneath all of it, there was a current pulling both of us somewhere we couldn't undo once we stepped in. I told myself I would walk away after coffee, that I was in control. But control disappeared the second I let my guard down. One moment we were reminiscing, the next his hand was brushing against mine. I didn't stop him. I didn't stop myself either. There was no pause, no hesitation, just momentum. It happened like it was always going to happen. Afterward, I didn't feel like I had won something or lost something. I felt still, quiet, numb. I got dressed in silence, went home in silence, and walked into a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. My husband was there, acting like nothing was different. He didn't ask questions. He didn't touch me. He just existed beside me like a shadow. I wanted to confess. Not to unburden myself, but because pretending was unbearable. The next night, I told him everything. Every detail. I waited for a reaction. Anger. Sadness. Betrayal. But he didn't break. He nodded slowly, like I had just confirmed something he already knew. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "That was the point." I didn't understand. He told me he never wanted honesty. He wanted proof. Proof that I would do it. That I'd choose someone else if the door was even slightly open. He said it calmly, like he had rehearsed it, like it was part of a larger plan I'd never been told about. Then he showed me everything. Screenshots of messages, call logs, location data. He had been watching the whole time. Not just aware, but prepared. I realized he had set the entire thing in motion not to save our marriage, but to document its collapse. He never wanted connection. He wanted confirmation. I asked why. He said he needed a clean ending. Something undeniable. Something final. I had crossed a line, and he made sure there was a trail behind every step I took. I felt sick. Not because of what I had done, but because of how calculated he had been. I thought I was the one slipping away. But he had already let go long before I ever touched someone else. There was nothing left to say. I'd betrayed him. But he had planned for it. We were just waiting for the moment it became real.